So item 2 is memo from the Director of Community Services regarding the status of Cobourg Victoria Park Beach following the August 31st, 2020 Municipal Council resolution deadline. The action that I'm going to put on the floor, just wondering if Mr. Larmer, could you put that up for us, please? The action that I'm going to put on the floor is a combination of 2 of the staff suggestions. And this really is just to get the conversation started. I'm very interested in hearing what other members of council feel is the right course of action. So the motion is that council receive the report from the Director of Community Services, and further that council extend the closure of Victoria Park Beach until after the Labor Day weekend, and further that the beach be reopened on weekdays only, beginning on Tuesday, September 8th, 2020, with the continued closure of the beach on Saturdays and Sundays until October 17th, 2020, when the fencing will be removed and the beach reopened. Are there any questions or comments from members of council? Mayor Henderson?
Thank you. One point of consideration to your many details within your motion, it talked about October 17th, and I just checked my calendar. Thanksgiving ends on Monday the 12th, and I know at this point a particular community group is working with a dedication to the Fern Blodgett Sunday celebration on October 17th, and we could have upwards close to 100 participants. And of course that's to occur near the beach area in what I call the sensory gardens. So based on that, I'm wondering if there'd be any consideration to change the date to October 14th, which is a Wednesday. My rationale is it takes us past Thanksgiving weekend and still hopefully would provide enough time for freeing everything up for the weekend, in particular knowing that we have one of the significant events coming to the town of Cobourg on October the 17th, starting at 1:30 in the afternoon. So a comment I'd like to put on the floor for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Henderson. Do members of council have any response to the suggestion that the end date for the fencing would be October 14th? No? Mayor Henderson, would you like to put that amendment on the floor?
Well, Councillor Charlie, I could, but if you're willing to agreeable to this and you can stay within the house of all your other important points, I think it really simplifies things if you're in agreement.
Any objections from members of council? No? Yep, Councillor Bureau.
Yeah, I'm in the mind thought of keeping the beach closed. We are still in the midst of this pandemic. After the Labor Day weekend, I know generally kids go back to school. This year is kind of different. There's still a lot of people that are off of work. I don't know myself, it would just be a guess if the beach would either be have more tourists coming or not. My guess is if the weather is nice, they're going to be coming. So I'm in the mind frame of keeping it closed until October 1st.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments from members of council? Councillor Beattie.
Microphone, my apologies, Chair. I appreciate your motion. I am in support of reopening the beach on weekdays, keeping it closed on weekends due to warm weather and a soft transition back to the community. Speaking with councillors in Sauble Beach and Wasaga Beach and Port Hope, restricted access or closed periods seems to be helping mitigate some community anxiety and as well as influx population. I do have a question through you, Chair, and this is possibly to either interim CAO or to the clerk. And it's really just around enforcement bylaw staff. Do we feel comfortable, confident that we have the appropriate level of bylaw staff to cover this extension if the beach was to open on weekdays for visitors and safety precautions? Would we be enforcing maximum capacity on the beach to ensure physical distancing? So really my question is just looking for some commentary around enforcement and bylaw staff capacity.
Thank you, Councillor Beattie. Mr. Davey, Mr. Larmer, would one of you like to field that question?
Through your chair, I can start and maybe the interim CEO can follow if I missed anything. Regarding the tools that the bylaw enforcement department has is we have numbers. We have just hired a new bylaw enforcement officer as well as we have redeployment of the staff, which we hope to hold on to until after the busy season kind of ends. The tools that our enforcement agencies have basically are bylaws, regulatory bylaws in place. We don't have anything that would allow us to enforce any physical distancing. I know there's coming up, we have the physical distancing bylaw coming back to council for consideration as well, again, which we preferred, so that's something. We don't have any max capacities through bylaw in place at the Victoria Beach yet either. So what we would be probably doing is enforcing the bylaws that already exist, so the nuisance bylaws, public nuisance bylaws, any parks bylaws, so every park use bylaw, barbecues, those things like that. I know Councillor Troy did ask me the question regarding the overcapacity of the beach, and I apologize to her. I didn't provide her with an answer right then and there because I had to think about that. Our bylaw enforcement officers this season have an increased level of responsibility, increased level of pressure from community and some other individuals. So to put them in a place to have them to have to shut down arbitrarily without an actual number or something in place like a bylaw could cause concern for them, and how they do it and questions related to what the purpose of it and how they came to the conclusion of that. So if the case would be, I think it's something we have to look at to give them extra tools if we're still worried about the physical distancing, some capacity on that or those parts of it. But with capacity right now, we're good because we don't have the numbers that we usually have. Speaking in past experience, after the Labor Day weekend is when we start to really see a decline in the use of our beach, as well as when we get to the Thanksgiving weekend, our waterfront park can actually finish as well too. We usually scale back on our officers, but again, this is not a normal year because the beach has been closed. We don't know what to expect, and we haven't known what to expect this whole process when it does open up. We could have people that, like I said, that aren't working. There's some staggered school starts across the province, so we really don't have the crystal ball in order to what to expect enforcement. I think this year, for me as being the manager of it, is we've had new revelations and experiences than we ever had. What we do right now is we enforce that Trespass Property Act provincial. Once that beach is open, we no longer have that. So then we have to resort back to our regulatory bylaws in those cases. So it's a complicated question. So I hope that I provide a little bit of information for you, but it's nothing that we can't try and then come back to council or make that decision at the senior level or something we can bring back or call a special meeting or those things forward if we do have those concerns. And I think the best way is to bring back through the directors and Director Hestrick and interim CAO solutions if we do have a problem and something we could think about, and we have been thinking about this whole process, anticipating if the beach were to open up. And I know the director has had many reports on that. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Larmer. That's very helpful. Mr. Davey, did you have anything to add?
Well, I just think that if the decision is made to open during the week, it would be during the weekdays, it would be made on the basis or the assumption that the crowds are not going to be significant. I think to open and then expect enforcement to enforce physical distancing or enforce numbers on the beach I think would be a lot to ask. So I think the idea would be to open, hope that it works out well. If it doesn't, then steps would have to be taken to close it or something if that becomes an issue. But I think it would be based on the key assumption that crowds are not going to happen during the week.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Davey. Are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Darling.
Yes, thank you. I'm a little torn here both ways. Sometimes I think just keeping it closed will alleviate a lot of headaches and concerns of some of the citizens. We have opened up to stage 3, as Councillor Bureau brought forward in an earlier discussion. We've opened up our downtown, our pubs, the main street, it's outdoors. So I'm kind of going with the fact that I don't think there will be the large crowds. And if we wait till after Labor Day and the 8th, monitor it through the week. And if it does turn out to be, as we hope not, huge crowds from out of town, then on the 14th, we have a committee of the whole. I think then we close it till the 17th. And a lot of people want to see it open. We've seen other beaches open up, parties, crazy things happening. I don't really think that will happen here. I'm hoping that the people will be respectful of each other and will lay their towels down if it is warm and keep some distance. A lot of people wear masks in the public, keep their physical distance. We're in the open air. A lot of the health from the health units have said it's 15 minutes in close contact. Nothing's a proven fact yet, but I think with stage 3 and where we are, I think we can responsibly go with opening it on the 8th and then monitoring that weekend. And then on the 14th, if we have to, we'll make an emergency motion to close it again till the 17th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darling. Deputy Mayor Suzanne Seguin, and then on to Councillor Bureau.
Thanks, Councillor Chorley. 2 things. Your vision is to open the gate, I guess, at the beginning of Monday and leaving the gate open till the end of Friday. Is that how I'm envisioning it? You're not going to open and close it every night. You're going to leave it open for the week. Okay. And the second item, we all have seen a tremendous amount of birds flocking near the shore. Is that at all a health issue for opening it up for possible swimming there? Do you anticipate there's any contamination of the water of the beach? Just will a cleanup be required to allow swimmers there after 3-4 months of being closed?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Those are great questions. The intent with this was really to leave staff to determine exactly how the gates would be open and closed. My suggestion would be to harmonize the opening and closing times with that of Port Hope. Port Hope, as a municipality, is also closing their beaches on the weekend until further notice. I believe they close on a Saturday morning and then reopen, I think, at 10 a.m. on a Monday morning. Mm-hmm. But we could leave that to staff to determine. And I'm just wondering if Director Hustwick, could you just address the question regarding water quality and bird droppings on Victoria Park Beach?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The park staff continued to rake the beach, and certainly if it was open, that would be a priority. Water quality testing has been continued throughout the summer due to our blue flag designation, and we have not had any adverse samples. So the water quality has remained good.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments? Mayor Henderson?
Thank you. I know we have proponents on both sides, but we do want to emphasize we are in phase 3. Staff has done, I feel, a brilliant job along the way to make good decisions along with council to ensure we're moving, inching our way along. I know that Lucy is now opening up by appointment. I expect come September, we may see Victoria Hall open up to the public as we continue to move along the curve. I know that Director Husbeck is setting a target date of August 31st with ministry and health discussions of how do we start to reopen up the CCC. And of course, we've already opened up our downtown through motion. So the province is opening up. I know we're doing it cautiously, but I do expect that staff, through ourselves, through our comments from the community, if we feel we're not meeting our standard, I have no doubt we'll call a special council meeting to deal with this critically important issue. I know we're all working hard to get it right, and I feel this is a step perhaps in allowing us to move forward based on actual stats within Northumberland, or what we might call Peterborough South, which have remained for a consistent time very status quo, which I'm very pleased to report. So again, I appreciate the comments from everybody, and I appreciate your motion, Councillor Charlie. I feel it's another way for us to inch and move forward with an overview from the bylaw department, from the expertise from staff, and of course what we'll hear from members of the community by way of council. So again, if other than consideration at this point of the 15th, I think I noted, I am support to give this an opportunity to flourish.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. And just to clarify, I wrote down your suggested date was October 14th. Is it the 14th or the 15th that you wanted to put forward?
I believe it's the Wednesday, which I believe is the 14th. Am I right? Sorry. I'll relook at my calendar. I apologize.
Yes, the 14th.
Thank you. I thought Wednesday would take us away from Thanksgiving, provide enough time for those days for staff, and allow us to prepare for the 17th with a major function in the Sensory Gardens for the town of Cobourg.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from members of council? Councillor Burkett and then Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Councillor Charlie. It would actually be my opinion that we should open the beach in full, as that was kind of my intent initially, because I figured at this point we would have been through the phases and the reopening of obviously lots of things. And I think it would give an opportunity for, I know there are a lot of children going back to school, whether it's phased in or not, that aren't going to be able to experience this beach. And there's going to be a lot of anxiety amongst the children going back, obviously, even if you're doing schooling from home or from afar. I know it's going to be difficult on all fronts. It would ultimately be my preference to take the fence down, open the beach as of September 1st. But obviously, from what I'm hearing for other members of council, a more phased in approach. But I think at this point, what we got to remember is we're not going to have the crowds. The crowds come from the events that we have, whether it's the Rib Fest, the Sandcastle Festival. Those are where the people kind of come to our beach. I don't think we're going to experience those kind of crowds. Even if we had the beach open, I don't think we were going to experience that, because at the end of the day, that's usually when the very, very busy times are. And I think as the local health unit actually spoke to when they were on the call, that we really didn't have to put a whole lot of restrictions in place. And I think there was just a lot of anxiety. And I think we've eased that by closing it initially. My preference would be to open it fully at this point, and let's move past this and just give people the opportunity to use it for the last little bit that there is until the obviously the fall. And that's just my comment.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask when the time comes for a recorded vote.
Certainly. Councillor Bureau.
Thank you. A couple things. If I heard our Mr. Larmer correct, there is no way to patrol or make sure that there is physical distancing on the beach, because I'm pretty sure that that's what he said. Second, we're in hopes that we don't have tourism coming in after the long weekend. So we're hoping on that. Second, the pedestrian-friendly weekends in downtown. The reason why that we opened them, or what the DBIA's intent was so that everybody can go shopping downtown safe with physical distancing. So it wasn't an event. It was a way to have everybody be physical distancing in downtown. So now it's my opinion, if we're going to be opening up this Monday to Friday, it's going to be going all over the news, just like when we closed it. To me, that's going to trigger everybody to come back, especially whether it be on the weekends or the weekdays, because there was a lot of people that came and didn't know the beach was closed. Even when they came off the 401, that sign was still there saying the beach was closed, and they still came. To me, I would rather not risk it and keep us safe. I'm proud of our citizens for what they've done with keeping our cases low. We're talking back when kids go back to school or schooling from home. This is when the flu season's starting. And so what we're asking is saying it's okay to come on the weekends or on the weekdays to come down to our beach, but not on the weekends. So again, my vote's going to be to keep it closed until October 1st. That's mine. And that to me is making sure that our residents are safe, and they've done a great job in keeping the cases low. So to me, I want to help them out. I understand how people want to go on that beach. I understand the sacrifices that they made, and I thank them for that. But to me, for staffing wise, bylaw wise, policing wise, to me, keep it closed for this season, and we'll look at it again next year. That's my last comment.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments from members of council? Okay, before I call the vote, I'll just share some of my thoughts. I have been very mindful of the health advice we've received that the likelihood of the transmission of COVID-19 in open air environments, it's very, very low. We had a delegation tonight, Adam White, he said there is no scientific data to suggest COVID-19 transmission and infection in open air environments. And I noted that. And I've been also tracking really where the hotspots are in Ontario. I have heard from citizens, they are concerned that visitors to our community might be coming from areas where COVID-19 is more prevalent. So the latest statistics that I've seen is that within our health unit, we have 2.2 cases per 100,000. And those are active diagnosed cases, so very, very low. Looking at Toronto Public Health, compared to our 2.2 cases, Toronto Public Health is reporting 7.6 cases per 100,000 population. And then looking at Windsor, Essex, and Huron-Perth, they have much higher rates of COVID diagnosed at 18 and 22 cases per 100,000. Those are active cases. So at the moment, Southwestern Ontario is more of the hotspot. I think it's difficult to anticipate exactly what the demand for our beach will be. There are so many factors that go into that. Knowing that, yes, school will be starting, but there could be staggered starts. We've mentioned that. Also knowing that probably there will be more homeschoolers this year. Some people are still working from home. They haven't returned to the offices. We have seen in other parks, Ontario parks and other municipalities, an increased demand for these kinds of public spaces. So it's very difficult to anticipate demand into September. It certainly will not be a normal September. But at the same time, I think it's important that if we can provide safe access to a public space, then we should do that. and taking a cautious approach, keeping it closed on the weekends when we are more likely to see larger crowds, I think is a sensible and phased approach. And with that, I think I will hand it over to Mr. Larmer for the recorded vote. Oh, Councillor Burkett, you had one further comment?
Yeah, I'd actually like to put a motion on the floor.
Sure.
The action recommended that council receive the report from the Director of Community Services, and further that council direct staff to reopen the Cobourg Beach beginning on Tuesday, September 1st, 2020, and that the fencing be removed.
Okay, any other comments or questions from members of council on the amendment? And Mr. Larmer, do we need to have a recorded vote for this amendment or a general vote? A general vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
A recorded vote.
Okay, seeing no other comments, I'll call the vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? And it's defeated. So we'll go back to the original motion, and I'm just going to read it one more time for clarity because there was a date change there at the suggestion of Mayor Henderson. That council receive the report from the Director of Community Services, and further that council extend the closure of Victoria Park Beach until after the Labor Day weekend, and further that the beach be reopened on weekdays only beginning on Tuesday, September 8th, 2020, with the continued closure of the beach on Saturdays and Sundays until October 14th, when the fencing will be removed and the beach reopened. Mr. Larmer?
Yes. So if it's okay with you, Chair and Council, I'll forego the procedural bylaw reading as I've done that already in the meeting. Is that okay?
Yes.
So recorded vote as requested by Councillor Nicole Beattie. First up, Councillor Nicole Beattie.
For.
Councillor Aaron Burkett.
For.
Councillor Adam Biro.
Against.
Councillor Emily Chorley.
For.
Councillor Brian Darling.
For.
Mayor John Henderson.
Or,
And Mayor Suzanne Seguin.
Or,
So Madam Chair, 2-1. The motion is carried.
Okay, so the motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Larmer. And so next on our agenda, we will be moving to item 5 on the agenda next. And this is memo from the Secretary of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee regarding a recommendation regarding the Cobourg Beach. I'm going to read a slightly different action recommended. And if Mr. Larmer can put that up for us, please. So the action I'm going to put on the floor is that council receive the recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, or PRAC, for information purposes, and further that council endorse the recommendation of the committee and request staff to investigate and report on how comparable beachfront communities are managing and regulating their beaches and waterfronts for public access, with the report provided to PRAC by November 3rd, 2020. And further, that council request PRAC to receive public input on how the town of Cobourg can manage the popularity of Victoria Park Beach and provide recommendations to council by March the 1st, 2021. So I can speak to this very briefly. The intent of this motion is to address some of the concerns that we have had from members of the public as we've been discussing how to manage Victoria Park Beach in this age of COVID-19. We have heard from the public a lot of concerns, and we've heard them tonight as well, about how we manage so many visitors to our community and all of the impacts that has on our community. And I think it is time for us to have that community-wide conversation. We heard from some delegates tonight suggesting a task force. I actually feel that the best forum for that discussion will be through our existing Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. The committee can receive delegations. Anyone who's interested in presenting to the committee can come and share their views, and hopefully the committee can be involved in undertaking some public engagement through Bang the Table. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? Mayor Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate your motion and your comments. The only question I have, and perhaps for your consideration, when I think of this, I also see there's a portion involving public works, especially if we're talking about parking in the area and what could happen. And I'm just wondering, how do you foresee involving them into this discussion as well?
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. That's a great question. I think that deserves some thought. I think the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee could certainly forward some questions to the Public Works Department, and perhaps even receive a presentation from the Public Works Department when time allows. There is a fairly long timeline here until March the 1st, when PRAC would need to bring some recommendations to council. So hopefully that would work with the schedule of our of our Public Works Department. I certainly think that parking is a very important part of this equation, and that has to be part of the consideration as we look at how to manage the beach going forward. Are there any other questions? Councillor Beattie?
Thank you, Councillor Charlie. I'd just actually like to thank you for, I think, a very strategic blend of citizen concerns, the expertise, and the engagement at the Parks and Rec Committee level. We've talked about how, this is a really great opportunity to leverage the functionality of our advisory committees, as well as continuing to embrace, the expertise and the research and analysis that can come through the community service department. So I will be supporting this. I don't think we need to have a new task force outside of the Parks and Rec Committee. And so I just applaud you for bringing this blended solution forward for council's consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Beattie. Deputy Mayor Sagan?
Thank you, Councillor Charlie. I also want to thank you for bringing this forward. I believe another layer, although a task force would bring new people, this Parks and Recs committee is already formed. They're already dedicated to the mandate that they have before them. And I would like, and I know you're a strong advocate of transparency and public engagement. So as the coordinator, I would like to see a real robust, possibly survey, but a real robust engagement of our community. This has been an issue that none of us have ever dealt with before. So we have to get it right. I think we do need changes, and I really look forward to what your committee will come forward to and have another beach discussion down the road. But it's a good way of doing it, and I applaud you and I will support it.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll certainly take that comment on board. We haven't heard from Councillor Darling.
Thank you, Councillor Charlie. I too think this is a discussion that we need to have. I'm just a little concerned about the workload. I'd like to confer with Director Hustwick that I think your November 3rd date, with budget coming up around the corner and the COVID staff limitations and what is, can I ask Director Hustwick for his opinion on the time frame and the actual work it'll take to get the data that's required.
Absolutely. Director Hustwick, can you comment on the timeframes?
Well, I would say ordinarily November 1st wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but we're still at the moment assessing the staffing requirements for reopening the CCC that we're about to talk about. That is likely going to consume a lot of resources and reassignment of staff. We can certainly do our best. But we're trying to avoid having to hire a lot of additional part-time people, although some of that may be required, but we are certainly reassigning roles and responsibilities in order to open the CCC. So that's my only concern is, and we're still going through that process. We can certainly shoot for November 1st.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Hustwig. Based on your comments, we can push that date back to December 1st. That's when the following PRAC meeting is scheduled to take place, if that would help. But the overall objective is really to have this conversation with the community for PRAC to bring recommendations to council in the spring and make sure there's enough time to implement any changes that might need to be made ahead of the 2021 season. Are there any other comments? Mayor Henderson.
Thank you, Councillor Charlie, for your points. I just wanted to say thank you again because I was a proponent of banging the table because I saw the extensive use in the city of Kingston and how they use it in a myriad of different fashions. And I know there was concern from the deputy mayor that perhaps we're not using it enough. And this is a great opportunity, as you expressed, where we can use it and get back this awesome response from the public. So I want to thank you because we have the program, and if we can put it out there as a multiple source, I'm hoping it will provide the stats, the feedback that we require through your committee to bring back information to council. So again, thank you for recommending that. I think it's we have it, so let's use it.
Absolutely. It's a great piece of software, and I really like the way it allows us to share information with the public, but also to receive our residents' feedback. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. And should I read it again, or does everyone understand the small timeline change to December 1st for the report to come back to PRAC? Is that okay? Great. So I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed, if any? And it's carried. So that brings us to item number 3 on our agenda. Resolution from July 27th, 2020, Council meeting, Town of Cobourg 2015 legal opinion regarding the Town of Cobourg Harbor. The action recommended is that Council receive the legal opinions from 2015 and 2011